Hello everyone, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Amaka. In this tutorial, you're going to be learning how to make hip and butt padding. If you're yet to subscribe to this channel, please click on the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified whenever I upload new videos. So let's get started. I have my pattern paper here. Now I have a tutorial on how to draft a basic skirt. I'm going to leave the link of that video in the description box below so that you can check it out later. So now, with this pattern, now this is the back panel and this is the front panel. Now with my pattern paper, I'm going to cut the main fabric and the lining. Now I'm cutting the skirt. This is the front panel. My lining is placed on fold because it's the front panel. So for you to want to sew a hip padded skirt, I want to believe that you already know how to make a basic skirt. So I'm going to cut the lining. Now take note, I did not add any other thing to the lining. This is just my basic skirt pattern that I've already added my seam allowance. So I'm just going to cut it the way it is. And this is the front panel. Now this is the back panel. I'm going to cut it the way it is here. So I'm cutting it. I want to cut the main fabric. So I've pinned my pattern paper on the main fabric. Now take note, this is the front panel. The front panel is placed on fold. Now this is my foam. This is the foam I'm going to use for this hip padding. So now my foam is, the size of my foam, the width of my foam is half inch. This is half inch. So I'm going to mark from here. Now I'm going to mark half inch here. I'm going to mark half inch here. Now if your foam is 1 inch, it means that you're going to mark 1 inch. If your foam is half inch, you're going to mark half inch. So because my foam is half inch, I'm marking half inch here. And from here, now when I'm cutting my pad, I'm going to come down by, from this point, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches. So now I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches from here. And I'll connect this point to this point. While from the knee point, now this is the knee point. This is the knee point. From the knee point, I'm going to go up by 2 inches. I'll go up by 2 inches. So now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect this point to this point, and I'll connect this point to this point. Now this is just to make room for the foam, for the hip pad. If you can remember, while I was cutting the lining, I didn't add this allowance. The lining is just exactly I didn't add this allowance on the lining. I'm adding this allowance on the main fabric just to make room for the foam. So now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect this point to this point. Now you might be wondering why I did this. Now from here, from my hip, I came down by 2 inches. I came down by 2 inches and drew a straight line. So I'm trying to still, I still want to have that 2 inches, that 2 inches line, so that to avoid pointy edges. That 2 inches that we used to come down by whenever we are making our basic skirts, we come down by, from the hip point, we come down by 2 inches. So that's what I'm still trying to maintain here, so that I don't have pointy edges. So now I'm going to connect this point to this point and this point to this point. Just like this. See how I'm turning my curved ruler? See how I'm placing it. See how I'm placing my ruler. So I'm going to cut it. This is the back panel. So I'm still going to add, now this is the side. This is the side and this is my zipper allowance. So I'm going to add that ½ inch, the ½ inch that I added. I'm still going to add it here. And I'll connect this point. Now from here, I'll come up by 2 inches. This is my knee point. This is my knee point. This is my hemming allowance. While from here, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches. Now this is just to make room for the foam. So I'm going to connect the point. See how I'm placing my ruler. And I'll cut it. So the next thing I'll do is to cut off all the allowance on this pattern paper, including my zipper allowance, so that I'll be able to cut the foam. Now the next thing I'm going to do, now this is the side and this is the center front. This is the center front and this is the side. So from here, from the waist, I'm going to come down by, from the waist I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches. And from the hip, from the knee, I'm going to go up by 2 inches. I'll go up by 2 inches and I'll connect it. Now on the hip point, I'm going to go in by 5 inches. I'll go in by 5 inches and I'll connect this point to this point and I'll connect this point to this point. Just like this. So this is the front. Now for the back. So because I've cut off my zipper allowance, I'm going to be taking my measurement from the center back. Now this is my center back. And this is the side. So from the center back, I'll go in by 1 inch. I'm going to mark 1 inch from the center back. From the knee, I'll go up by 2 inches. This is the side. I'll go up by 2 inches. I need to cut off this allowance. This allowance. Sorry, I've not cut it off. I need to cut it off. So now from here, I came down by 1.5 inches from the waist, and from the knee I went up by 2 inches from the knee. And on the hip point, from the zipper allowance, I went in by 1 inch. So I'm going to connect it. This is how I'm going to connect it. I'm going to connect it this way. And I'll connect this point to this point, just like this. So now I have my hip pad here. This is the back panel and this is the front panel. So I'm going to label it. This is the upper part and this is the lower part. This is the side. This is the side front. This is the upper part and this is the lower part. And this is the side. This is the side back. This is the center back. That is the zipper part. So now I'm going to cut it. Now this, I just labeled it so that I don't mix it up. So that when I'm cutting my foam, I'll know where, and when I'm also placing it on my fabric, I'll know where to place, you know, how to face it. So I'm going to cut it. So I've gotten what I need. So with this, I'm going to cut out the hip. I'm going to cut the hip pad with this. This is the front. This is the front and this is the back. This is the upper part and this is the lower part. So I'm going to cut it just exactly the way I have it here. I'll cut my foam with this. I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. I've transferred what I have here on my pattern paper to the foam. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to indicate. Now this thing has back and front. So I'm going to mark. Now I'm marking here as the wrong side. This is the wrong side. Now this is also the wrong side. So this is going to be the right side, just not to mix it up. So the same way, I'm also going to mark this. I'm going to use here as the wrong side, just not to mix it up. And I'll use here as the wrong side. You know, so the same way I have this low, this up, I'm also going to indicate on the foam. I'm going to mark the foams, because if you look at this, if you look at here and here, you might not really know the difference. By the time I remove this paper and I don't mark it, I might not know the part that is supposed to be up and the part that is supposed to be on the waist and the part that is supposed to be on the knee. It might be a little bit confusing. So that's why I need to do that. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this paper. Now when I remove this paper, I'm going to trim down the foam. This part of the foam, I'm going to trim it down. I'm going to trim it. Let me remove the I'm going to trim the foam. I'm going to trim the foam, this part of the foam. I'm going to trim this part of the foam. This is the center back. This is the part that is going to be on the buttocks. So I'm going to trim here so that it will look flat and natural when the person wears it. So the same way I'm also going to trim here. Now this is the side. This is the side. I'm not going to trim here. This is the side. I'm going to trim here. I'm going to trim here. This is the hip. I'll trim this part so that it will look natural, flat and natural. So I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. This is the front panel. I've closed in the dart. I've sewn the dart. I've also sewn the back dart. So the next thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take this my sewing machine and I'm going to join the back panel to the front panel, right side facing right side, and I'll sew here, and I'll also do the same thing here. So I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to join this to this, right side facing right side, and I'll sew. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So after sewing, this zipper allowance will still be open. So the same way I'm going to sew this, I'm also going to sew the lining the same way. So I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. So this is my foam. Now I've finished trimming the foam. I trimmed the sides. So you should trim your foam, trim it very well, so that you have to trim your foam very well so that it will look natural when you fix it in the skirt. You understand? Trim it very well. This side, trim it very well so that it will look natural. So now I've trimmed this one. I've trimmed all of them. So the next thing I'm going to do is to iron hairstay on it. Now the reason for ironing hairstay on it is because if you don't iron hairstay on it, when you sew it, if you wash it, the foam will become weak and it might tear from here. It will tear or it will scatter. So for you to secure your foam, in order for it not to tear, you use hairstay. So I'm going to iron hairstay on it, all of them. I'll iron hairstay on all of them. So after ironing hairstay on all of them, then I'll come and join it. So now this is how I trimmed it. I trimmed this part. I trimmed this part and I trimmed this part. This part is going to be at the front. So I trimmed this part while this is going to be at the back. This is the butt. This is the center back. So the same thing with this one. I also trimmed this side. This side is going to be at the front. This is going to be at the back. So I'm going to do all these things that I just said and show you the outcome. Now I've joined the main fabric. I've joined the sides. So it's the back, it's the zipper that is open, it's the zipper allowance that is open. And I also did the same thing on the lining. After ironing your interfacing on the foam, you will have something like this. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to sew it. At times, for some persons, they used to sew it like this. They used to sew it like this, but I don't like doing it that way. You sew on top of this thing. I don't like sewing like that. So this is how I sew. I used to sew. I prefer sewing with my needle and thread. So what I'll do, I'll just bring it, I'll just join it this way neatly so that it will not be bulky here, so that this place will not be too bulky. So this is how I used to join it. So now after sewing, this is what I have. You see, it's not, you see that it's not bulky, it's just okay. This is the back. Now the same way I did this, I'm also going to do the other one. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to sew on the interfacing. So I'm just going to sew it round just to secure the foam, So I'm going to sew on the interfacing round. So the same thing I did here, I'm going to do on the other one. So I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. Now I've joined it. I've sewn the sides. I've secured it. So I've sewn it round. Now the next thing I'm going to do, let me show you how to attach it to the lining. So this is how to attach it to the lining. You bring the lining and you fix it this way. So you come down. Okay, this is the upper part. Okay, this is supposed to be here. No, this is supposed to be here. So from here I'm going to come down by 2 inches. You know, here I have my seam allowance here, which is ½ inch plus 1.5 inches. On the on the pattern paper, when I removed the seam allowance, I came down from, when I removed the seam allowance, which is ½ inch, I came down by 1.5 inches. So now here I'm going to come down by 2 inches because here I still have my seam allowance here. So I'm going to come down by 2 inches and I'll sew it. So I'm going to sew it this way. This middle, this joining, I'm going to sew it to this place just like this. I'll sew it and sew it down. I'll sew it down. Then after sewing it this way, after sewing it straight, I'll now sew it this way. So as I'm sewing it, I'll just be opening it so that it will not fold. I'll sew it round. I'll come back to this place and I'll sew it round and come back to this point. So the same way I'm going to sew this, I'm also going to sew this the same way, like this. So I'm going to sew this the same way. So I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. So after sewing, this is what I have. Now I've fixed I've padded the hip. This is it. I've sewn it to the lining. So the next thing I'm going to do is this. Take note, I sewed it on the wrong side of the lining. So the next thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to bring my main fabric. Now this is my main fabric. I'm going to place the lining on the main fabric, right side facing right side, just like this. I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew. So I placed it right side facing right side and I'm going to sew. Now take note, on the zipper allowance I have 1.5 inches zipper allowance. So I'm going to sew with ½ inch seam allowance. I'm going to start by, now take note, now my lining is 1 inch shorter than the main fabric. So when I sew, I'm going to start by sewing the lower part. I'm going to sew with ½ inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew here with ½ inch seam allowance. After sewing with ½ inch seam allowance, then I'll pull it up. When I pull it up, I'm going to have something like this. The main fabric will come up a little. Then I'll sew here with ½ inch seam allowance, and I'll sew here with ½ inch seam allowance, and I'll be left with 1 inch zipper allowance. So after that, I'm going to turn this to the right side. I'll turn it to the right side. I'm going to iron it. So after sewing, now this is what I have. You see how it is? I've turned it to the right side. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a thorough press. Then I'm going to close this part and I'll fix my zipper. I have 1 inch zipper allowance here, so I'm going to fix my zipper allowance and I'll close the lower part and I'll close here. Then I'm going to attach my band. I'll fix the band. So I'm going to do all this. I'm going to do all the things I just said and I'll wear it and show you what it looks like. If you found this tutorial helpful, please click on the like button. Share this video with your friends. Share this video in your sewing groups. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so. Feel free to ask questions. I'll be in the comment section to answer all your questions. We've come to the end of this tutorial. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.